breathing PE. One of the things you'll have to do is assemble the circuit. So this is designed this, and this end goes here. There's large bore tubing and there's some small bore tubing. The large bore tubing is where the gas flows to the patient. I'll explain how that works in a sec. The small bore tubing does two things. One, it powers the nebulizer, so I can put medication in there and nebulize it to deliver. And then the other one is it pressurizes the exhalation valve. Let me just kind of show you what the exhalation valve looks like if we take it apart. So what we end up having, if you kind of looked on the channel here, gas is flowing this way, and then there's an opening here. Okay, this exhalation valve fits on there, so that when it's pressurized, gas has to go that way. When it's not pressurized, gas can come and leak back out again. So it allows for gas to be directed towards the patient or gas to be exhaled off. We're going to use this port here to hook up our right respirometer to measure tidal volume. This is a little piece that fits in there, and this would go to my test line. Now, there's two different sides to this. One is the pressure side on the left hand. I'm sorry, the sensitivity side on the left hand side, and the pressure side on the other side. If you look down into it, you can end up seeing that there's magnets on each side, and there's a silver clutch plate that is pulled there. So this is able to move back and forth. When it's in the position where it's pulled towards this side, it's off and it's waiting to basically be triggered on. The sensitivity setting, the setting here, will move that magnet closer to the clutch plate or further away from the clutch plate. The closer it gets, the harder it is to turn on, because I got to generate pressure to pull it away from that. The further away it is, the easier it is to turn on. Now I can make it so close that it's impossible to turn on, or make it so far away that it turns on by itself. Both of those are obviously bad. You want it just right. I want to watch the pressure manometer, and I want to see it swing back 1.5 to 2 centimeters of water, and that's considered a good trigger pressure. Okay, 1.5 to 2. Or 1 to 2, basically. Negative. On the other side is a pressure chamber, and the pressure chamber has a setting also. So as gas begins to flow through the device and pressurize the lung, my pressure is going to rise. When it reaches the pressure that I'm targeting, it's going to shut off. Okay, so it's a pressure cycled ventilator. That which ends inspiration is a certain pressure. The third control here is a flow control, and this allows us to go ahead and regulate the speed at which it's getting to that targeted pressure. Okay, this is going to determine inspiratory time. The faster the flow, the shorter the time. If Stephanie goes 90 on her way to school, she gets to school really fast. If she goes 30, it takes a little longer. Okay? The pressure is going to determine the volume. More pressure, a bigger tidal volume can be delivered. We're going to give you a scenario where you have a patient. We'll tell you the gender, we'll tell you the height, we'll tell you gender and height. So you can determine then what a tidal volume range is. We want our IPPB tidal volume to be 2 to 3 times their spontaneous tidal volume. So you start by figuring the spontaneous volume, and then I say what's 2 to 3 times that. And I want it to be in 1 to 2 seconds. Okay? So a couple other controls that are here. This is an air mix control. When you pull out, I'm sorry, you go when you push in first. It's 100% source gas. So in this case it's oxygen, it's 100% oxygen. If I had this hooked up to a blender, I could dial in a specific FiO2. Okay? When you pull it out, it entrains air through a brass filter on the side. Okay? That air that is entrained then mixes with the oxygen and I have a variable FiO2. There's a Venturi gate that is here on the pressure side, and as we know, any downstream back pressure on a Venturi will reduce the amount of air that is entrained and drive the FiO2 up. The FiO2 range when this is pulled out is 40 to 80%, and it actually changes during the breath. The start of the breath, it starts off around 40, and by the time it gets to the end, it's somewhere around 80. There also is an expiratory timer that is a backup rate. We're not going to use it for our treatments, but if I was using this as a continuous ventilator, I can set it up so that I have a backup rate. When I go ahead, when this is in the off position, there's no gas flow. As I turn it so that there's gas flow, now my lung begins to inflate. It'll continue to inflate until the pressure is where I want it. And then we will allow the patient to exhale. So what we're going to do is you have in your mind what that 2 to 3 tidal volume is. Let's say I want it to be 800 for whatever reason. I would go ahead and adjust my pressure until I get to that 800. On the side is a little red stick. Push it in, it'll trigger it on. Now you can imagine that's a really long breath. That's way too long. My tidal volume is okay, but my inspiratory time is not. So as I make the gas go faster, let's see what it triggers on. You can see it pull back a little bit to trigger it on. Now I got a shorter I time. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 1 Mississippi, 2. But I don't have the tidal volume. So you're going to go back and forth changing the pressure, changing the flow to get the tidal volume where you want it and the inspiratory time where you want it. Okay? Now, some of the problems, some of the troubleshooting, and a lot of the questions that you're going to have on this PE are based upon troubleshooting. 2 things that can end up, well, 3 things actually that can end up happening. One is it cycles off too soon. Okay, and that's usually because the inspiratory time isn't long enough, and it's usually because there's some sort of a pressure that's built up in it. It's hitting its pressure too quick. So if the patient sticks their tongue in the mouthpiece, it's going to cycle off quick. Okay. The other one is leaks. If there's a leak in the system, it'll never cycle off. Okay? And that leak can be one of these hoses come off. It can be because their lips are not tight enough around the mouthpiece. Whatever the source of the leak is. The third thing is that the needle, as this rises, if you notice, the nice smooth rise up, if it hangs at some point and doesn't rise, it's because the patient is drawing air in. They're sucking on like a straw. If that's the case, my flow isn't high enough to meet their demands. So I'm going to increase the flow. More often than not, in respiratory therapy, if there's a problem, increase the flow. Now that I said that, I lied to you, but that's okay. Okay? Questions? Definitely go through, because a large part of this are troubleshooting. The IPPB homework should help you out. You got the answers, so it's just a matter of going through and as I think I might have said, on the next exam that we have, IPPB is part of the exam, and I will tell you that probably maybe 10 questions are directly lifted from that homework. We should all give them 100% on that part of the test.
Oh, then not there, go to.